You're watching memorable entertainment television. MeTV TriState.
Broke the story on local homestead tax credit fiasco. Expose the Evansville Redevelopment Commission excessive spending habits.
Your community watchdog. CityCountyObserver.com is your online community newspaper dedicated to the progress of Evansville and Vanderburgh County. We're a nonpartisan publication providing insight into political issues and events that shape our community. We are a watchdog for you, the citizen. Check us out online, city-countyobserver.com. That's city-countyobserver.com.
TriState Voices, an open discussion with area leaders on issues affecting communities throughout the Tri-State. Now, here's your host, Mike Woods.
Good morning. Welcome to TriState Voices. Every week, TriState Voices interviews one of our community leaders concerning issues that are important to all of us. TriState Voices is jointly sponsored by the City County Observer, WTSN, and my office, Woods & Woods. Hi, I'm your host, Mike Woods. Today we're honored to have the Republican candidate for County Commissioner, Bruce Ungethiem. Bruce was on our shows in the springtime when he was undergoing a pretty rough primary. He won that primary, and now he's opposed in the general election by the Democratic candidate, Sherman Greer. Bruce, you've been campaigning now, I guess, about 7 months, nonstop. Again, a pretty tough primary. You're involved in a contested general election. You've talked to thousands and thousands of people, probably more people than you'd like to admit. You've gone to many, many groups and talked to them. What's the number one issue that people ask you about when you're out campaigning?
Well, Mike, thanks for having me here today. I think the number one campaign issue that people are talking about is public safety. They're interested in roads and road construction. They're interested in the existing roads being fixed and the potholes covered so that they're not having issues along those lines. They're interested in the Green River Road construction area and making sure that they have a safe means of egress to and from work and to and from the east side. So I think that's their number one issue is the public safety of the roads. They're also concerned about public safety with law enforcement. We've got some issues with drugs in Vanderburgh County, and we've also got some issues with violence going on in the downtown area, and they're very concerned about that issue as well.
Have you enjoyed campaigning? I mean, that's you retired not very long ago, and then this is your retirement.
Yes, this is not what I had envisioned when I retired. Things kind of come up that you have to take advantage of when they do arise, and it has been a very interesting time for me. I've met a lot of very interesting and knowledgeable people going through this process, and look forward to continuing that process as we go forward.
You mentioned Green River Road. There's been a lot in the newspapers and everything about the problems out there on Green River Road, and they had to redo it, and there was lawsuits and everything. Would you just explain to viewers what happened out there?
Well, Green River Road, the first section of Green River Road, Phase 1, was put in several years ago, and part of the problem that they had with the road settling is when they put in the piping systems for the drainage, and when they bridged between the bridges and the approach ramps, they used compacted sand to compact that area. And as time goes on, we have an extreme drought, we have a lot of flooding, you're in a creek area, that sand tends to shift. And when that sand shifts, then the road surface above it will shift with it. And unfortunately, when the sand shifted down, then the road structure shifted down as well. The solution to that problem, and what we're doing with Phase 2 of Green River Road, is instead of using compacted sand to fill in those areas, we're using flowable fill. And flowable fill is a very flowable type of plaster Paris or concrete structure that flows around the pipes, flows around the structures, flows around the various things to fill in the voids. And then it solidifies. And once that flowable fill solidifies, it will not move and it will not settle, so that it then supports the structure above that flowable fill and the driving surface so that it won't settle.
Well, how much does that flowable fill add to a project?
It depends on how much of the flowable fill you're going to use, but my guess is it's probably 1% to 2% additional cost in the road construction.
And then when they repave the road, they don't have to go change the flowable fill, replace it. That's a permanent thing?
That becomes, yeah, that's almost like pouring concrete down there. It will stay in place.
Okay. So once you've done that to a road, you might have to repave the surface, but the flowable fill is going to stay good.
Correct.
Okay. Now, they had that problem up on I-69 by Petersburg with that road, the interstate settling. Was that kind of a similar? It
was a similar thing. It was also in a location where you were going across a river bed. In that particular case, in Green River Road situation, it was going across Pigeon Creek bed. But you've got soils in that area that are not conducive to compacting and are not conducive to staying solid when it rains quite a bit. So you have to use a more solid flowable surface or a flowable fill media that stays solid, rain or drought.
I've lived in the northern part of the county pretty much my whole life, and it seems like there's certain roads out there. They pave them, they get all done with the road, and it looks great. It looks perfect. I mean, it looks like, to me, they've done, and I'm an amateur, but it looks to me like they've done an excellent job. But then there's certain places that there's always a chuck hole. I mean, after a year or two, it just starts going to pieces, and then, again, you go through that same cycle. You pave the road, it looks great, and that same place will end up with a chuck hole.
The substructure underneath the road was not built up sufficiently when they put the road in. And what happens with that substructure is it starts to move, especially if we have, like this spring, we had a 5-inch rain. You had flooding, you had a lot of rains, you had a lot of roads that were actually underwater. And as you get that, then you start getting that substructure to move around a little bit, and combine that with heavy truck traffic, whether you've got farm trucks or coal trucks or something running on that road, and then all of a sudden that road starts to act like a sponge and start moving around.
And so the solution on those places, I guess, where it's like that, they're going to have to you'd have to just dig that out and put some flowable fill down in there?
You'd have to dig it out and replace that substructure with something more permanent, either pack it in with 53s, a rock substrate, or some kind of lime substrate to help solidify the soil underneath there.
Okay, and I guess that flowable fill, that's the same stuff they got to use around pipes, because you can't get that sand packed around the pipes.
Correct. Yeah, you want to get down to the back side or the underside of those pipes and fill in all the voids, because if you leave voids in that area, eventually that is going to migrate down to those voids, and then the void becomes up on the top surface.
Okay. Now, I see roads sometimes that they look really good. They get flooded, maybe they have an inch or two of water across them, and then people are driving across that road. And it just seems to me that destroys the road. I mean, again, is that an area you're going to, when they redo those, should they use a flowable fill type of system there?
Well, as we put roads back in, as we put the beds back in for new roads, we need to make sure, number one, that we have adequate compaction material underneath the road. So that the road bed will compact down and stay solid. The other thing that we need to do is, as we put in new roads, we need to make sure that we elevate them high enough and put substantial drainage ditches along the side to prevent them from actually flooding. That will help as well, keeping that top surface of that road structure from getting inundated with water.
I've always wondered if sometimes when a road's flooded like that, if they'd be better off just to close that road for a while. And when you see people driving over that when it's, like say, an inch or two of water, that's got to be tough on a road.
Well, it is, because that road is totally 100% saturated at that point in time. And you're taking, if you're taking a car across it, you're taking 5,000–6,000 pound car across the road, it's going to move. If you take a 20,000 or 30,000 pound dump truck across there, just think of how much more weight and how much more that road is going to move if you're allowing that traffic to go across there.
Now, as I understand it, the county commissioners are in charge of the roads in Vanderburgh County, but the surveyor's in charge of the bridge. Is that right?
That's correct.
So, I mean, you've got a bridge. The road on the north side of the bridge is controlled by the commissioners. South side of the bridge is controlled by commissioners. But the bridge itself, that's the surveyor.
The surveyor is responsible for the inspection of all bridges in Vanderburgh County, he will go out and make those inspections and then report back through the Drainage Board and to the commissioners as to whether a bridge is in need of repair or replacement, and then a project will be generated to make that repair or that replacement.
You know, we're continually talking about ways to make the government more efficient, but would it be better if we just put that whole thing, the bridges and the roads, under the commissioner rather than have it split like that, or is that not really a problem?
Well, I don't know that that's an issue as long as the surveyor and the commissioner work together on those things. You know, the surveyor actually has the people to go out and do the inspections and make sure that those things are done on a routine basis, on an annual or biannual basis. So I think that works well. And you know, the surveyor's responsibility is if he finds a bridge or an abutment or something underneath a road that's failing, to bring it to the attention of the county commissioners and or to the county garage if it happens to be a culvert or something like that, so that it can be repaired.
You know, there's been some debate whether or not the assessor's office should be appointed as opposed to elected, because there's so few people meet the statutory criteria to be an assessor.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, now, like I say, they're talking about abolishing the assessor's office, just have that appointed. Do you think at some point they may end up doing a similar thing with the surveyor?
Well, that would have to be a state decision, because those positions, whether it be assessor or treasurer or surveyor, are state appointed positions, and they are in the state code that they shall be an elected position. So if that situation happens, that would have to be something that would be voted on by the state representatives and state senators.
Of course, you know, they keep putting more and more credentials on people to have a certain office. You limit the number. I mean, I think you said one time, are you going to make the treasurer have to be a CPA, and on and on and on? You're an engineer, but I mean, should that be a requirement for commissioners? Well,
right now, the only office that has a requirement is the assessor. That has to be, I think, a level 3 certified assessor. I think there probably should be some qualifications that you should be able to meet to run for certain offices. But again, that's a state directed initiative, and that would have to go through state law in order to do that.
Let's talk a little bit about Walmart, probably a subject that you've heard more than you want the last few weeks. Of course, there's been a proposal to build a Walmart at Boonville, New Harmony, and Highway 57. You think it'd be a lot better if we moved that down to I-64 in Boonville, New Harmony?
Yes, I've made that suggestion to the developers, and I've also made that suggestion to the current commissioners, that the area at Boonville, New Harmony Road and Highway 57 is more of a residential area. And if we were to take Walmart and move that structure with a land swap down the road about a mile, down Boonville and Harmony Road to where it intersects Interstate 164 at this point in time, I think that would be a much better location for a heavy commercial environment or an industrial environment, and the infrastructure, the road system is better there. It would not cost the county nearly as much money to upgrade the county road that services that, and it also would help with the residents out in the area having that industrial or commercial complex further away from the residential area.
Yeah, Boonville, New Harmony, east of 57, was redone when the interstate, and it's a wide road, big shoulders and all that. But when you get west of 57 on Boonville and Harmony, it's a narrow road. There's no shoulders at all. It's a ditch drops down, and then to really widen that thing is going to be, in some cases, it's going to be rough on the homeowners, because you're going to be moving that thing into their yards.
It will be. It will be very expensive and time-consuming to widen that road because of the current structures that are there.
Yeah, and you wonder how some of those houses, when I drove through there the other day and looked at that, if you widen that road much, you're going to really get that road close to some people's houses.
Yes, you will.
It wasn't set up that way.
That's true. You know, that's also true on Green River Road, just north of Millersburg. Some of the houses in that area lose a substantial amount of their front yard as Green River Road gets expanded to 5 lanes.
Well, and then when they, in Green River Road, the way that was raised up, some of those people that look out their front door, they're staring at a elevated road. It's not a very nice thing you have done to your house, I guess. So, what was the, you said you talked to some representatives of Walmart or somebody about your proposal?
No, I talked to the developers that are working with Walmart, and I've also talked with Joe Kiefer in the county commission area, and basically suggested to them that they consider moving the site, doing a land swap for one of the 4 corner locations on I-164, and just see if Walmart would be, interested in doing something like that.
What was their attitude toward your idea?
They listened. They basically said that they would take it under advisement, but I have not heard anything since then about that.
Still kind of being debated then?
Yes.
Okay. You've talked a lot about jobs, and you've proposed that one of the ways we need to do to bring jobs in here is by creation of more industrial parks. Mm-hmm. Tell me about industrial parks.
Well, the real way to bring jobs and development into an area is to bring manufacturing jobs into an area, because manufacturing jobs not only add the job that you've got in the manufacturing sector, but they're also a spillover effect where they also add jobs in the service sector. So in order to do that and to attract manufacturing facilities here, we need to have areas where they can quickly develop a building, get into the building, and get their business operational. So we need to take a look at areas where we can put an industrial complex that is conducive to a manufacturing facility. If we can make an industrial area that already has water and sewer and electric and gas and a rail spur and those kind of things that manufacturing facilities are going to need, then bringing a manufacturing facility into the tri-state area, into Vanderburgh County, becomes much easier and much quicker, and we have much more to offer them than just walking out and saying, here's a cornfield, and 3 years from now we may be able to make it a manufacturing facility.
Yeah, if somebody's wanting to expand their facility, speed is critical to them. It costs a lot of money, and also how can they bid on contracts if they don't know when the factory's going to be done? And
you're basically in competition with other locations who have these capabilities, who have a greenfield site ready to build on. And you're saying to the manufacturer, we can do this in 3 years, and your competition in Ohio or Illinois or Kentucky is saying, we can have you up and operational in 16 to 18 months. Well, the manufacturer is going to take a look at that, and they're going to say, I'd rather go here because I can get started quicker.
Yeah, because the market changes so quick. In 3 years, who knows what the market's going to be? They may be building a factory that they don't need anymore.
Right.
So are there places inside the city limits you think we could put some industrial parks?
I think we need to take a look at that. I think that's an option that we haven't explored in the past, and I think there might be some areas inside the city limits where we have enough land mass that we could put a small industrial complex. Obviously, it's probably going to be very close to utilities, to sewer, to water, to electric, to those kind of things. If it would have a rail spur, that would be great. But there are areas around Evansville that we should be looking at and designating as industrial complexes, and trying to promote those to the potential clients that we have out there.
We've got the old courthouse and the old Coliseum, really, really neat old buildings. Everybody's in agreement they want to preserve them. But I think also everybody's in agreement that the county's tired of every year being bled on cash on those. They're still eating up a lot of cash. The old courthouse, they've really done a lot to improve it over the years. I mean, they've added air conditioning, improved the electrical, added new windows, the roof. I mean, the building's really improved. But what could be done so that the county doesn't continue year after year after year to bleed cash on the Coliseum and the old courthouse?
Well, I think the key is just like the old jail house, is we've got to get a tenant that will come in and sign a long-term lease to be a an occupant of that building. We need to make it palatable enough so that somebody would want to come in there. We need to have the adequate parking if that tenant needs parking and visitation capability, and then try to sign long-term leases for those tenants to move into those buildings. Getting them occupied and getting them generating revenue for the county instead of sitting idle and having us pay for it is the key.
Well, if you want to preserve an old building, keep it occupied. If you want it to die, just let it sit there vacant.
Correct.
That's kind of maybe an oversimplification. That's pretty well how it comes out to.
Yeah, it doesn't take long for a building to become dilapidated if it sits unattended.
Yeah. Well, and then like the old jail, the building we're in right now, you know, we have a lease on this thing until 2067. And so that's so many years. I mean, to me, that's just like owning the building. So if I put a new furnace in here or whatever, it's just like putting it in my own building.
Correct.
So maybe we can get that same kind of arrangement.
You get that ownership feel to it.
Yeah. Well, because it's going to be, whatever improvement you're doing is going to be used up before you give up the building, so
Right.
not lost anything. In downtown Evansville, we have the Ford Center, the Victory, the Old National Events Plaza, you've got the C.K. Newsom Center. Then around the town, you've got a lot of the high schools now have really big, nice stadiums in it, and auditoriums. Then you've got USI out there. People keep talking about Mesker Amphitheater, and I know technically that's under the city's jurisdiction, and you're running for a county office, but then a lot of these buildings I mentioned, they're under the county. When you add all that together, I mean, the Coliseum, I mean, the amphitheater was a neat place and all that, but realistically, is there the money to fix that thing? And then are we going to be building something that's in competition with other facilities that really aren't being used very much?
Well, we have a situation where we've got more facilities than we have utilization at this point in time. Mesker Amphitheater is a great outdoor amphitheater. I remember going back there when I was in high school and watching concerts. But we really have to take a look and understand what is the cost to bring it up to current code, and what is the potential for its utilization, and determine whether that is actually feasible to do for the county. You know, it is a nice facility. It doesn't get utilized a whole lot. Obviously, it doesn't get utilized in the winter months. So we need to determine, is that cost versus benefit a viable thing in which to do the repairs?
Yeah, this summer I looked at the schedule for events that were being held at the Ford Center, the Victory, Old National Events Plaza. It's amazing how often those buildings are vacant.
They sit idle quite a bit.
Vast majority of the time, really.
Yeah, they sit idle quite a bit, and you know, that's a situation where we need to work as diligently as we can to make those buildings that we have in the county more utilized over the course of the year.
One of the most important things the county commissioners do is appoint people to boards. If I remember correctly, there's about 34 separate boards you guys appoint people to. And I know you've taken a real interest in these boards. What would you change? If you get elected county commissioner, or would you change anything on the boards?
Well, I think I would change some of the development boards. There are a half a dozen different boards that deal with metropolitan development or county development or you know, growth in the county. And I think there's a real confusion among people and probably among potential clients coming in as to who they're supposed to talk to when they come into our community, and who is supposed to be in charge of this development thing. I think we need to consolidate those into a more concise board, and take time to make appointments on those boards that people have experience in that area, and do a little more vetting when we do appoint to the boards, to make sure that we've got the right people at the boards at the right time. The second thing I would do would be to make sure that as these boards have meetings, that we have a representative, an elected representative on that board, so that we have feedback to the elected representatives of what the board's doing, and to make that board decision and those things that go through the board more open and accessible to the general public, so the general public knows what those boards are doing, knows when they meet, what they're doing, and what the final decisions are.
Should boards be allowed to give variances?
Well, that's an interesting question, because that's going on right now with the Walmart situation. Yeah. The board currently is hearing whether a variance should be granted for parking, lighting, noise, those kinds of things. My personal view on that is the board should be able to make a recommendation, but the final decision should be in the hands of elected officials.
Okay. The budget process is just now starting for this year, right? Would you just describe to me how the budget process goes? As I understand it, Joe Grease, he'll come out with some preliminary estimates. Is that right?
Well, Joe collects all the information from all the department heads and puts together a budget, and then that goes to the county council, and the county council then takes a look at that budget, and they massage that number, move the numbers around, prioritize things up and down, such that the final budget then becomes the county council's responsibility to vote on and approve. But Joe's responsibility as the auditor is to bring all of that information together from the various department heads, including the county commissioners who submit a budget to Joe as well.
Now, I think last year the budget had to be cut from about $53 million to $48 million because of shrinking revenue. Any idea if numbers going to be the same, or who knows?
I have not heard what the revenue generation is going to be this year. I don't know if it's going to be higher or about the same. I would have to defer that question to the county council. I don't even know if they know at this point in time, but I would hope that they would know that by the time the budget is complete.
Okay. The county commissioners have, obviously there's 3 county commissioners, and they're the executive branch of the county. In the city you have the mayor, 1 person, the state you have the governor, 1 person, federal you have the president, 1 person. Would the county be better off with 1 good, strong voice as opposed to 3 county commissioners for its executive branch?
If you could trust that 1 good, strong voice to do that, that might be the case. The issue is, and the reason the county governments were set up with 3 commissioners, is they didn't want that power all in 1 person's hands. They wanted to have 3 different people with the ability to have opinions on what is going on. If you have a strong and viable leader who is fair and objective to all the people within the county, then it makes it more efficient if you just have 1 person. But if you have a person there that may not be as strong, may not be as reliable, then it's better off to have a 3-person board in which those 3 people have the ability to vote on issues instead of 1 person just making a decision. So I would lean towards having still the 3-people commission.
Bruce, I really enjoyed having you here. It's your 2nd time you've been interviewed by us, and you've certainly not ducked any answers, and wish you the very best of luck on your election. The next week, we're going to have Catherine Martin. She's the current Knight Township trustee, and she's up for re-election. We hope to see you next week. Thank you.
This year in the Tri-State, 1 out of 8 people will be in an accident.
Would you know what to do?
Call Woods & Woods. They'll get you help.
When you call Woods & Woods, you are not a statistic. You are our client, and we will fight to get the money you deserve.
And that's what Mike did. He really fought hard for me. They just really cared.
If you've been injured, call 1-800-544-2108.
Let Woods and Woods work for you. You don't owe us a dime unless we win your case.
You're watching memorable entertainment television. MeTV TriState.